One of the most common injuries after an automobile accident is a brain bleed. And these types of brain bleeds can be classified in lots of different ways. You can call it a TBI, which is a traumatic brain injury. You can call it a concussion. You can call it a subdural hematoma or other types of hematomas in the brain. But essentially what happens is that blood is now making contact with your brain and it's pressing on an area, creating pressure. And this type of pressure is extremely dangerous. Anyone familiar with modern society and sports and things like that have heard of these protocols that people go into when there's a concussion. And the reason for this is people want to make sure that they're safe and that no damage is being done after they've received a concussion. In a car accident, it's very common that there's a head trauma. There's lots of things. There's steering wheels, there's dashboards, there's windshields, all kinds of things that can hit your head after an accident. And you might be taken to the hospital and they're probably going to do a CAT scan to determine if you've had what's considered to be a brain bleed, a concussion, or some other type of subdural hematoma. But the brain bleeds are very dangerous because they can affect your cognitive ability and your emotional state for a long time after the accident and sometimes even permanently. Sometimes you might have to go into rehab, speech therapy, occupational therapy, to rehab to make sure that you regain these functions that might have been temporarily lost or diminished after an accident in a brain bleed. It's important if you've been in an accident and you're not sure if you're okay to go to the hospital to get this checked out, because sometimes you might just feel a little woozy, you might feel a little nauseous, you might get a headache, and people can kind of think that these are, not severe symptoms, but they could be very severe, and it's very important to get them checked out immediately. So if you've been in an accident and you have a brain bleed or you have a headache, get checked out, get the proper care so that way you can get into PT, physical therapy, speech therapy, so that way you can get better and make sure that you regain these functions that might have been compromised. And if you've had a brain bleed, you certainly can get compensation for your injuries. And depending on the severity, you will be able to get compensation for those injuries, whether it's traumatic brain injury, a brain bleed, or concussion. So make sure you get to the doctor, and then after you're treating or before you start the end of the treatment, make sure you can contact a lawyer to make sure you get compensation for your brain bleed.